Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Fully Geared. And today, I should say I am Plate, first of all. And today I am joined by the famous Erekai. How's it going, man?
Famous. Good. How are you?
Good, man. Yeah, so it's been a little bit before we talked, so it's good to have you on today.
Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for coming today. We're going to be getting into the dispositions and kind of the nitty gritty more so of it, and kind of talking about topics that normally don't get talked about, or the depth of the topic that doesn't get talked about. And we're going to be seeing what they have so far, what we know as the community, and go off of that. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right. So to kick it off, I pulled up I like to do this, man. I like to grab, I guess, the essential word. If there is an essential word, trying to bring it back to the original root of why they chose it, why this works. But this is the meaning grab from Google, but disposition, a person's inherent qualities of mind and character. Some synonyms are temperament, nature, their character, constitution, makeup, and then the second definition was in the way in which something is placed or arranged, especially in relation to other things, which is pretty special when you think about it like that, and how the dispositions will work and do work. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the word choosing by VR?
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, especially the part where it says their inherent qualities of mind and character. Like when we dig into it and we see that this is going to this system is going to affect the behavior of these NPCs. I don't know that I could think of a better description.
Yeah. I really like that they're choosing this, and they're not doing it in like a state of being or like an alternate mindset or anything like that. It's disposition is literally like built into your character, and hopefully how they function is that they are built in to the actual mobs, and furthermore of what the dispositions will carry afterwards. So but let's go ahead and jump to our next slide. So first up, we got the acrobatic disposition. And if you guys don't know what dispositions is in Pantheon, it's basically a way to make the mob harder. So per encounter you come across, you're going to be seeing mobs that are just normally scouts or normally bruisers or brawlers or something like that might be a little bit more difficult than your average guard per se. But the cool part is dispositions add inherent qualities that make them stronger, but also carry weight and also carry I should say make the encounter much more engaging but strategic too, because you have to really utilize your strengths and weaknesses. When some mobs you might not, you might be able to just steamroll them, or just spank and tank. So that's not going to be the case, and especially for the acrobatic, it's going to make the tank's life very challenging. But acrobatic is can and will traverse climbable terrain while roaming or chasing players. So that one right there, what do you think about that?
I think it's awesome. The interesting thing about that is Joppa has said on some other videos that there will be some mobs that can't climb and some mobs that can.
Right.
You would expect that like a spider NPC or a mob would be able to climb, or humanoids.
Right.
And so, and I don't think that all of those will have the acrobatic disposition, but it'd be interesting to see how this differs from, just like any other spider that can climb. Like what kind of mobs might be acrobatic that could maybe not otherwise climb.
Right. Yeah, and that's a good point too, because we'll go into it, and it kind of gives like a description of the potential qualifying creature types and stuff like that. So, but yeah, the climbable surfaces makes it really scary. I feel like you can't really hide on a ledge or run away per se. I feel though that like the leash itself though runs to zone line, so I mean that part of it's going to be pretty standard per mob. But the fact that it could chase after you if you're just trying to run past it, and like it's literally like doesn't stop at the wall, it climbs up the wall and goes after you. I think that's going to be really fun.
Yeah, and maybe they could make mobs that could otherwise climb, if they have an acrobatic disposition, maybe they climb faster.
That would be awesome. That would
making it even harder for you to escape.
Like almost like a tierness to the strength of the acrobatic or something. Or like it adds furthermore. That would be really cool too. Then they can really layer that with like coming expansions. But so it acrobatic will have increased accuracy, evasion, parry, riposte, and movement speed. So like I said, as a tank, and I don't know like how well this is gonna translate into damage. I don't know how much damage these guys are going to have, but the fact that the accuracy increases is he's going to be hard to hit. He can parry, he can riposte, and his movement speed is faster. So it's not looking good for us thus far. So what do you think about that? I'll stop there.
I think that could be possibly one of the most notable things about the disposition, right? And I'm imagining that there might be I don't know, maybe some ranger abilities or something where like their range attack, they take extra time to aim it maybe, and it increases their their chance to hit, or makes their attack unmissable, in which case rangers could be really effective against acrobatic mobs, so that they can kind of mow over their increased evasion, parry, that kind of thing.
Right, yeah, which would be very difficult. I would say if you're even if you're a caster, I feel too, which they kind of suspect that casters will be able to help with this, with the lockdown and stuff like that, because acrobatics aren't that great with the lockdown, but they're immune to root, so which is the next one we're getting into. Which is pretty scary in itself, You can't really kite these guys, which I think that's like the the main focus of this disposition is to make the mob unkiteable, which kiting in MMOs especially is like very, very common, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, especially in like World of Warcraft and stuff, I remember kiting everything, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that should be interesting. What do you think about the immune to root?
I guess it depends on the reasons why you want to root it, right? Like if it's running, then you might want to root it. If you're trying to kite it, you might want to root it. I kind of feel like maybe immunity to root might be a little problematic if they decide to go that route. I would like maybe to see something like root has a lower duration, maybe. Like the acrobaticness of the mob could maybe break out of a root faster
Right.
than a non-acrobatic mob. Just generally speaking, I think that immunities in something like this is just kind of a problematic design, you know, because you can't really go anywhere from that. If it's immune, then it's immune. Like, where do you go from that? But
oh, right, I see what you're saying in terms of like bringing the disposition further.
Yeah, or you know, future content or scaling. Right. You know, if it's immune to root, it's immune to your root. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. That's kind of a discussion about game design in general, not specifically this disposition. But so I would like to see if they go with an immunity kind of thing. I'd like to see it be a little bit more reduced duration of these sort of, you know, tethering to the ground CC abilities.
Right. Yeah. The only thing I could think of, like, well, what I would do, I guess, in EQ was root the mob if he was about 10% health and he was about to run away. Usually a lot of them flee, or some of them flee. But also I would think if you're grabbing too many mobs and you need to keep them in place to back away so they can't fight you, like you're out of their melee range. But then I could see acrobatics pulling out a bow and then start shooting you, you know?
Yeah.
Which would be pretty cool. Like, I like the challenge and I like it super difficult. But it still has to be playable at the end of the game, at the end of the day. But I just hope that they don't take the immune to root. Or I should say, if they keep immune to root, they should really keep it, not be able to bypass it by a skill up of some kind for one of the characters, or sorry, one of the classes. You know, like by the third time, you drop the third ability point or whatever it is, the third tier ability point, and then now it allows it to go through acrobatic, which I hope they don't do that. I hope they stay pretty steadfast in that. So the resistance to snare and attack speed debuffs, sorry, that's going to be pretty challenging too, because it's really like this thing, you can't lock it down and you can't hit it, and it chases after you.
Right.
Pretty much. That's like, in a nutshell, what I feel acrobatic is. But this position adds a spice of flair to standard roaming patterns, encouraging. By the way, these slides that we're going through, this is all accredited to 187. Thanks, man. I really appreciate you putting this out on the forums. It allowed us to get some content that I didn't normally know that was out there. So awesome. Thank you for that, man. Yeah, so it adds a spice of flair to the standard roaming patterns, encouraging players to be more mindful of the surrounding environment, if we're not already, you know. These enemies are too nimble to be rooted and will cause headaches for melee classes due to their improved evasion, while casters can step in and provide aspirin for that headache. It's probably the ideal that they engage these foes with friends, as they are too nimble to root and they will be hard to slow down once they have their sights set on a squishy. I love him. He's so funny. Yeah, that's in a nutshell, that's kind of what it's going to be. The only thing I can think that is really going to help is the mez from the enchanter. you know, apart from what other abilities we may know, but I think the Mez is really going to help with that.
I feel like that will help in any aspect of the gameplay, but yeah, specifically this disposition as well.
Right, yeah. Potential qualifying creature types. So this is getting into who can be it. Animal, vermin, humanoid, vampire, supernatural, beast. Which is pretty standard. I think that kind of... I like the vampire.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I didn't even know that was in the game, if it is in the game.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because who knows what vampires come with, you know, like lifesteal and stuff. But yeah. Supernatural beast could be really fun too. Do you know what actually I just thought of? So you remember remember that video in the Merc when they were showing us in the gray box state, but they had like the Ents in there, and there's a couple other mobs, but it was pretty like not done zone, but they were showing like all the mobs and stuff running around. And I don't know if you remember, but there was like a werewolf like sprinting from like one corner to the other corner, like across their screens. So I feel like that would be great for an acrobatic or a bloodthirsty, but however they choose to randomize the the dispositions will be pretty interesting, you know, like what you come across in certain, I guess, situations and whatnot, because I really hope it's random. I really do. Like, so you honestly cannot prepare for what's behind the next door, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And you just have to get good at all of them rather than getting good at the ones that you can beat. So
yeah, and an interesting thing about like this qualifying creature types, you know, let's say you're in a dungeon or something that is largely I don't know, something that's not listed here, you know. I can't think of like a good example, like I don't know, an ice creature. I don't know, that's just throwing that
right,
out there.
yeah.
But like knowing that this dungeon is particularly full of ice creatures, then you may not need to worry about an acrobatic disposition because they just can't be it. And so I think that that makes the world design really interesting. That, you know, we need to, our group here experiencing in this dungeon needs to maybe have extra CC root abilities loaded because we don't encounter acrobatic mobs here. And so,
right,
you know, those abilities will be especially helpful here. But, you know, an ability that might counter some other disposition, we can maybe leave off our bars because we're going to be finding a lot of said disposition in ice creatures, and so we have to adjust our strategy accordingly.
Play set, yeah, for sure. I mean, that even goes with the loadout you carry, you know, which I think that there's going to be some downtime for getting that situated. I think that that's good. It's almost like a vetting process for the players to have through the dispositions. But do you like that necessarily?
Yeah, I do. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think it gives us some slight of hope. I think we need something that's not totally just chaotic, that actually has some balance. Because you can't just have something totally extremely hard and not any way to beat it, you know?
Right.
Just for the fact that it's hard, you know, it just doesn't work. What I thought was really cool going back, or going into the next part of it, is the modifiers of the archetypes and class modifiers and maybe other potential modifiers / modifiers. But it's really interesting that he brought up the scout too. So the scout's going to be the one that's primarily going to be modified from this. Maybe it's a little harder to kill a scout acrobatic just based on what the scout's loadout is. So maybe they come with that bow and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Or maybe it just means that, you know, if a particular mob is classified as a scout, then they're more likely to be acrobatic than not.
Right. Yeah. I could see that. I could definitely see that. When you're coming across a scout, you just check to see if the disposition. I would like to see the disposition to not necessarily known right away. You almost have to do a perception check on them or something like that. I think that would be pretty interesting. But
Yeah,
I don't know
I've
if that'd
heard
be
some
too
arguments
gimmicky.
about that. I've heard some arguments that people think that, that their opinion that the dispositions should be hidden behind perception kind of stuff, which I kind of agree with and kind of disagree with. I think that will pigeonhole too many people into
That's true. Yeah.
doing perception stuff if they're not, even if they're not aware of it. So I think that there should be some sort of give and take. Like maybe at low levels, dispositions will be clearly labeled, and maybe in higher levels you might want to have a keeper or someone with high perception skill. Maybe in raid areas where that would be helpful.
Yeah.
But
That's
I kind of
true.
don't feel like you should punish kind of everybody or sort of force everybody to level up their perception skill just by hiding dispositions.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I could see it even maybe be tied into stat like charisma or something. But I mean, nonetheless, if it is too gimmicky, so it's not necessarily one person. It's anybody that wants to skill into charisma. But
yeah, I could see something like that.
But I mean, it's definitely something that would have to get fleshed out and stuff. But so other modifiers are rogue, ranger, bard, monk for classes, which are pretty interesting too because those are mainly damage. Those are mainly damage besides the bard, which would be pretty interesting to see. And I've heard Joppa also talk about, especially in this, I want to say this stream he did with Theory Forge. He was talking about, he was talking about how dispositions can maybe be player orientated too.
Yeah, well, and he's talked about it at least a couple of times that I'm aware of where, he talks about all of the enemies having access to the same abilities that players do and vice versa. And so it seems to me that, and this was true in EverQuest too, that I should say EverQuest also, in that NPCs or mobs could have classes. There were some that were rogues and some that were rangers, and that gave them access to different abilities. And it seems to me like that probably will be the same thing where, if a mob is a rogue, let's say, I don't know, an orc assassin or whatever.
Right.
They're classified as a rogue. They're also classified as a scout. And so they would be certainly most likely to be acrobatic as opposed to something else.
Right.
I think it's really interesting. Joppa's talking about, just the enemies have access to the same classifications that the players do, and I think that
I love
will
that
potentially allow them to code this kind of stuff in.
I think it makes it easy to code because you're already coding it for the player. You just make it on an NPC. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's super interesting. I really want to hear more on that. So hopefully we can ask him that question on the next stream of theirs. But
yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah. So just to finish this slide off, and not every slide is going to be this long, guys. Just so you know, just because for time's sake. But other potential qualifiers are mountain, cliff, pit, obstacles, agile, dexterous, climbing. So I think that modifier goes both ways. So maybe it's a hindrance to him when they're doing that, or maybe they get a bonus for that. We'll have to see on that. So
yeah.
All right. Let's go to the next one, Alarmist, which we're pretty familiar with the Alarmist. We've seen a lot of gameplay on the Alarmist. So there's no real new news here, but we'll just go over it for the people that don't necessarily know. But basically, the Alarmist is a fleeing type of mob, and once they hit a certain HP threshold or percentage, they have a call for help button, which they kind of activate this ability while they run away every few seconds. So it's kind of funny too. I love how they did that. So as he's running away, he's shouting for help.
Yeah.
I love that. But yeah, so basically it increases the social aggro radius. This can be a huge problem, and we've seen it be a big problem on stream, especially when they let the Alarmist just go and get guys, and they didn't go run after him and try and lock him down.
Yeah.
And he came back with like 5 guys, and you're just like, oh no. They ended up killing it, but it still makes it interesting, you know. Especially if you're trying to clear the zone fast, I feel like they're doing the work. You know, you put the work on the NPC.
But man, they talk about how enemies are going to be so dangerous that even having a single ad can be really threatening to your party. And so, in looking over the list, I have to say I think that this one's probably the most terrifying for me.
Really? Oh,
you know,
okay.
Yeah. They start running and they start shouting, and if you're in like a cramped dungeon or something, thinking Halnir Cave or something like Lower Guck, you know, in EverQuest, there were enemies everywhere, and if you had one of them run away, it was a big threat.
I have to say, you are extremely right, sir. That is very true.
And I guess it depends if you're in an outdoor, if you're in a forest or something. Something's running away screaming help, help, and all that's hearing him is the squirrels, you know, maybe it's not very threatening. But
and that's go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say I personally enjoy being in dungeons, and so that's like my primary preference in leveling and consuming content. And so when I see this Alarmist, I'm like, oh man, if I see an Alarmist in one of these dungeons, you better believe I'm probably going to be focusing it down first, unless there are other dispositions that I've got to take care of first.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. We'll have to see on that, dude. I totally agree, and I think it's definitely going to be a zone-based thing. The potential qualifying creature types are pack animals, vermin, humanoid, giant, which kind of is Lower Guck in a sense, you know, besides the giant. But so yeah, that should be interesting. I think the vermin aspect with the what's the rat race? That's the enemies. What are they called? Not the Rotunda.
I want to say ratkin, but I don't even know.
Oh, ratkin. I think you're right, actually. Yeah, I think it is the ratkin. I could see them being big on that. You know, like you just get like 15 rats come around the corner. And you're just like, oh no. Yeah, so the increased chance archetype modifier for Scout, which is the same as Acrobatic. So placing Scout to have Alarmist, and which I don't know how much dispositions on regular mobs there's going to be. I know they've talked about bosses and names having more than one disposition, so it's pretty interesting.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
can you imagine an Alarmist Acrobatic?
No, and I like, yeah, it takes for, yeah, I don't know, that'd just be super hard. And we'll get into that, man, the cross play of that. But so the other increased chance modifier for class are rogues, rangers, bards, enchanters, summoners, warriors, paladins. So it seems like the class aspects are going to be more wide ranged. So they'll have, I think the Alarmist is going to be one of the most common type of dispositions that you're going to be seeing.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So just what you want to hear, right?
I'm terrified.
Yeah. I love it, dude. I love it so much. Other potential qualifiers / modifiers are Fortress Lair, Patrol NPCs, Lookout, Trapper, which we've seen lookouts and other people on the ramparts of Black Rose Keep and other things having them too, which can be a huge problem too.
Yeah, guard towers or something.
Guard towers, yeah.
That would be, and I think we're gonna come across that mention in a different disposition. But yeah, I'm imagining a guard tower that has an increased line of sight or something like that. Can you imagine, like, you're just barely approaching the castle and suddenly they're calling for help and reinforcing, and
well, there's even guys outside, so you're like, oh god, here we go, you know.
Yeah.
But I could totally see that, and I would like to even. I hope, I don't know. Like, I want them to shoot me, but I feel like that's super unfair. All right. Yeah. So that's the Alarmist. It's pretty simple, but has a very strong effect. You know, as you hear Erekai's kryptonite, I should say. But
Yeah.
let's go
Party
ahead.
seeking enchanter.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. All right, so Bloodthirsty. We've also seen this one. I wanted to go back actually real quick. So Alarmist, I put down for you guys looking at the human. The human actually has an advantage towards this on his passive innates.
Oh, thank goodness.
So if you're rolling human, Alarmist might not be so big of a problem. So are you rolling human?
That's good. I'm considering human for my summoner. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah. So let's hope that
Yeah.
if I end up going that route, then Alarmist won't terrify me quite as much.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So going back to Bloodthirsty, increased, which we pretty much know, and a lot of you who don't remember what Joppa was explaining about with the Bloodthirsty, but here you can read the card. But basically, the Bloodthirsty has an increased scent-based aggro range. So the normal circle, I guess, around the mob of where he aggroes from will be increased on the missing health of the player too. So which makes it pretty impactful when you're seeing a Bloodthirsty coming towards your way. It caps at 300% for all players in critical health. So that's actually pretty good. You know, so it doesn't fully, like if everybody's really low on health, you know, it doesn't, it's capped. So we know that there's some restrictiveness there for us.
Yeah.
It will enter a frenzy when a player in critical health is nearby, causing them to become immune to taunt and focus their attacks on that player. While in a frenzied state, a portion of their damage will be converted to lifesteal. So they're almost as if they become stronger in the sense that they are immune to taunt and their focus attacks that player. Meaning, I'm thinking that meaning the player that taunted them, no?
Yeah, I would take it to mean that they're just so driven to thirst on the blood of someone weakened that they just don't care.
Yeah, I love that. And I think
I guess you better hope that your tank is the one that's at critical health, huh?
Yeah, and how we exactly, and how we saw it with that named wolf. Was it the wolf named that had it, or was it a different wolf handler that was Bloodthirsty?
Yeah, no, they showed off a wolf in Amber Fate.
Yeah,
had the Bloodthirsty disposition.
Yeah, and that thing was they wiped real fast, you know. And I feel like that's going to be scary for the people, maybe the healers and the CCers. Just because he's going to be he's not going to be able to get taunted, and he's going to be coming after you if you're top of the aggro list, or even if you get hit, you know, from another mob, even if, because how it was shown, it was in a pack of wolves. So, I mean, if one wolf's hitting you down and you're a caster, you best believe that Bloodthirsty's coming for you.
Yeah. Healers better load up your group heals.
Yeah.
Keep everyone else topped off so that they don't suddenly switch targets and go after.
Yeah. And
your wizard or whatever.
Yeah, and even while he's frenzied, he goes into that, while he's in that frenzy, he goes into that frenzied state, which a portion of their damage will be converted to lifesteal. So he's gaining health back too on you, which is pretty scary. And I just think of vampires, which we'll get into that. The creature qualifying creature types are vamps. So that's interesting. So this disposition should strike fear into the heart of an adventurer. Players who need to maintain a respectable distance to ensure that they don't attract an enemy that would be honing in toward their next meal. There would be there would be a layer of risk/reward in a play, as seasoned adventurer parties could send their hobbled meaty halflings to the front line as bait, like tossing chum in the ocean. They they should care not be, or they should care to not be reckless while trying to exploit the voracious behavior, lest they become overwhelmed at the most inappropriate of times. I like that. Hey, whoever's going to be a halfling, I'm throwing you to the wolves.
Oh yeah, me too.
Hardcore throwing you to the wolves. I mean, if we're gonna have to sacrifice someone, we're gonna sacrifice the 0.5% of a person, you know.
You know what would be interesting is if gnomes had some kind of, I don't want to say immunity because of what I said earlier, but if, like, because gnomes are, you know, magical beings, if they don't bleed, then I wonder if they could have like
a pass through that.
Yeah, kind of like a gnome.
I think
bloodthirsty mob would not be able to detect an injured gnome because they don't have blood.
That's actually pretty, because they're ethereal, right? That's actually pretty interesting. I feel like that would be the advantage if that was the corresponding race, but that would be awesome. I could totally see that.
Yeah, and I guess maybe they list ogre because you've got the ogre on the card here, that maybe they only list ogre because ogre might be more fierce than them. You know, I don't know. And we don't actually even know, I don't think anyway, what these advantages are. Maybe it's just that these races deal more damage to these dispositions or what, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't really know the full extent of the advantage, but I could think maybe the ogre's blood is not tasty to them. Maybe it's not. You know, it's like that black gross blood, I guess.
Yeah.
I kind of get Lord of the Rings, you know, with the Erekai. Funny enough. But yeah.
Yeah, funny. No relation, by the way.
No. Potential qualifying creature types are bear, wolf, cat, shark, mosquito, which I don't think we've seen bugs yet. Leech, lamprey, bat, zombie, and vampire and zombie, which is cool. I think that is the perfect type of creatures to encompass that. What do you think?
No, I think that works really well. I think it'd be funny if they did something like all sharks were just always bloodthirsty.
Just every time you get into the water, there's just bloodthirsty
just
shark.
Every shark is bloodthirsty because what shark isn't?
Yeah, I know. And you gotta and it would be something stupid like you gotta farm them for a crafting recipe for food or to make beer or something like that, and everybody wants it. You know, that's funny. Increased chance archetype modifier, there's none for these, which I think that's okay. Increased chance modifier class would be a warrior, a dire lord, or a necromancer, what we've kind of been seeing with that. Other potential qualifiers /modifiers would be underwater / depravity. How do you say that? Depravity, I think. Depravity? I don't even know what that is. Hungry and blood, which is pretty cool. You know, I don't know the extent of what those modifiers can do, but I think that kind of works with the shark being underwater. Hungry vampire, maybe like you get to a vampire and more so that he's hungry rather than not, you know, and that's something
or the ones listed above, like bear, wolf, and cat.
Yeah, like you come and you're their next meal, kind of. That'd be really interesting, and the blood aspect too. So very, very cool stuff. I'm really excited to see what Bloodthirsty more has to offer. The ogre, like we said, has the advantage towards that, so we'll have to see, but it's pretty cool that I think the ogre fits for that. Probably because he's a little bit more ferocious than most things he's going to come across. So, yeah, let's go ahead and move on. All right, next is the Cunning disposition, which they've talked a little bit about. Cunning disposition is going to be probably a rogue's worst nightmare in a sense.
Oh yeah.
They can see through stealth, as you guys see, cannot be attacked from behind or pickpocketed, which is very interesting. So you can't just sneak by it, and you can't go and pickpocket it from it, whatever it's holding, which I love. Vulnerable to ranged attacks. So that's interesting. Maybe the ranger might excel in that. The disposition seems to counter rogues more than any other class. They complicate safe stealth exploration and have a built-in countermeasure against any damage that requires a rear-only positional quadrant, kind of like the backstab would be my guess. Their vulnerability to ranged attacks makes them an ideal target for rangers, but also opens up situational value for ranged abilities in any given toolkit. So maybe like throwing axes or knives. I think the rogue might capitalize with that, or potions maybe even. Depending on the potency of the vulnerability, NPCs with this disposition may end up being prioritized as the first target to be dispatched while dealing with the multi-NPC encounter. So there you go. Qualifying creature types are animal, vermin, and humanoid. Just pretty normal for that. They're kind of more of the Cunning-esque type. Archetypes for modifiers are going to be scouts, increased chance class modifiers are rogues, so that, which makes sense. So you're going to see a lot. And like they're saying, I think it's going to be a rogue versus rogue type of disposition, which I feel the stealth needs that, and I feel that they knew that. They built this disposition solely based on this, so you can't just I guess overuse the ability, or it's just a scapegoat out of everything.
Yeah.
But
which I have to admit that one of my favorite things about rogues, playing a rogue, is just being able to like go almost anywhere because people, you can just stealth and sneak just about anywhere, and that was certainly true in EverQuest, but I think games since then have kind of
not here.
Dialed this back a little bit. Like in World of Warcraft, even if you were stealth, if you walk directly in front of like an NPC's line of sight, they would often still see you.
Right. Yeah.
So and I imagine that a similar thing will be true in Pantheon. But then
they did say that
rogues are also going to have to just watch out for cunning enemies also.
Yeah, which you got to be cunning to the cunning, as cheesy dadness as I am. I got to get good at more of the dad jokes, dude.
Yeah.
Now that I'm a dad.
Get on my level.
Yeah, give me some dad jokes.
They just come to me.
Just snappy. So other potential qualifying modifiers are darkness, climate, underwater, underground. And man, I think I love the climate modifiers because that has such a big impact, I feel, especially for the darkness and this I guess ultimate darkness that they're talking about, or however they described it. But Joppa's saying like carrying a torch, you're still not going to be able to see anything really, it really gives me a Dark Souls vibe, and it really makes it scary and going to be hard to traverse through those environments, which I hope a lot of the best gear is in, sadly enough,
Yeah. I think it's really important for players to be afraid of the world. I think that's such a thing that's just missing from a lot of games.
Right.
That we're just able to run around almost with impunity, and I think it would be really beneficial for the game for the players to fear the world. Have to be cautious.
1000%, dude. Like, I feel that is something that totally MMOs got away from, and they just catered to the whole player base rather than making a game that's crazy scary and also crazy fun to be a part of, you know?
Yeah.
So I really, really hope that they nail that. But yeah. So what do you think so far of the Cunning? Pretty good?
Oh yeah, I think it's awesome. And I mentioned earlier that I was probably thinking about maining a summoner, or at least playing human for my summoner is what I said. But right now I'm on the fence between maining a summoner and maining a rogue. So
That's a good
I,
fence.
yeah, I really love rogues, and so if I end up going the rogue route, then I'm gonna have to watch out for these Cunning.
Yeah, there you have it.
More so than maybe the alarmists.
Yeah, I know. Oh man. So the advantage race to these guys are the Erekai. If any of you guys are liking the Erekai, you're gonna have a nice advantage to them.
That's a dark mirror, I believe.
Or sorry, what did I? Yeah, Dark Mirror. My bad. Dark Mirror, not Erekai. But the Dark Mirror are going to be really good because of the water capabilities that they have innate to them. So I think that we're going to see a lot of Cunning in the waters. Or sorry, in the waters, underwater, and on land. So you get kind of the best of both worlds on that.
Yeah, and I wonder if part of the reason why they chose that the Dark Mirror were beneficial, or at least have that advantage, is because they also talked about in the racial passives that the Dark Mirror would have increased stealth abilities, and so I wonder if this advantage is sort of like a rogue, Cunning counters rogues, but a Dark Mirror with increased stealth abilities sort of counters Cunning disposition, because they're better at stealth than maybe a rogue of a different race. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. That is true, and I think solely maybe it's tied into the lore that they kind of are mermaid, kind of in the water, and fish are really cunning. They're very fast and able to get out of situations and whatnot, but also to see things like on a dime, dude. Really.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting. So let's go ahead and move on to the next disposition, which is the Deranged disposition. So Deranged is very awesome, and I really like this one. So they are immune to stun, they're immune to mezzing, and they are immune to other disorientating effects.
Ooh, chanters beware.
Yes. So I feel that this is a very needed one, because the whole time from the beginning to the end, or beginning until present of my journey through Terminus, I feel that the enchanters are way too overpowered, and I feel that Mez is too strong of an ability, and they really, really need to make countermeasures in there to help prevent this, and not make it too powerful for the players. But
yeah, I totally agree.
I love the fact that they added the stun capability into it too, because this is going to make paladins very, very upset. If you guys are going paladins, you are not going to be able to stun Deranged, so have fun. And other disorientating effects, that's very interesting too, because that could be a lot of things. But yeah, so what do you think on that?
I think it's really, really important to keep, like you said earlier, like to keep sort of CC and classes in check a little bit. They're just so useful. I mean, I mention EverQuest all the time, like it's my MMO of choice. But you play the game now, like lately I've been playing on the newest TLP server, and
Yep.
A group is not complete without an enchanter. Like everyone wants an enchanter in the group because they're just so good, right? Like because it's really important to have a disposition that can kind of counter them a little bit, keep them in their place a little bit.
I know. I love that about EQ, but I also hate that about EQ.
Yeah.
I really, really dislike the fact that you need this specific role in order to get the best out of the game. I really don't like
Yeah.
that. I like the advantages it brings, but I don't like it to be game-breaking advantages, you know? But that's
Right.
what I love about the Deranged, because it's really, really, really restricting this. And hopefully there's going to be a lot of Deranged. I could see a lot of the Deranged being in undead zones too. Just because they're all kind of deranged and crazy.
Yeah.
You know, but another thing I liked is they will attempt to flee at unpredictable times and in erratic ways. So you really can't predict a life percentage of the Alarmist. So this is kind of scary for you too, and me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that can be really interesting on that, and I see a lot of broken dreams with this Deranged. This disposition seems to counter crowd control abilities, as we know. The Deranged are immune to mind altering effects, which is also good. Oh, so that's what I was going to say. The other disorientating effects might be, which is a big problem in EQ, especially in the TLP server, is charming. So once they get to a certain life, their resist to charming drop down, and you charm the mob, and then the cleric heals them up. So this is going to be negating that for sure. Likely because their minds are already wrapped and or warped and deranged. In other words, these kind of NPCs already suffer from severe disorientation and are thus exempt from further application, which is really cool. This disposition causes multiple layers of conflict in how you deal with them, especially if you have social aggro. If they happen to run off while you still having high HP, that's going to create a lot of tension. Burst damage would likely be very useful against these NPCs, as you would want to remove them from your equation as soon as possible. Potential qualifying creature types are animal, humanoid, vampire, demon, giant, zombie, ghost, which all I feel qualify pretty well. Increased chance archetype modifier for healers and casters. So if they're going to be a healer / caster, this Deranged is going to be very useful. Mob speaking. And
Right.
Increased chance class modifier for druid, shaman, wizard, necromancer, and enchanter. Which are all pretty much casters. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then other potential qualifiers / modifiers are darkness, isolation, and depravity. So yeah, what do you think? And I really love, by the way, how the halflings have the advantage. I feel like if they're the race to have advantage to Deranged, it's just solely on them. Maybe the gnomes, but I feel with Mastermind the gnomes kind of come in with that. But yeah. What do you think?
I find this a little interesting, and maybe it's because I am not fully understanding, what a deranged person is, but I view it as that, like, they don't have their mental faculties together. Right?
That's
Like,
exactly that's exactly what it is.
But then their class archetype modifiers and stuff are for casters, so it's like, do you have someone that's deranged, but I guess they have enough mental faculties to still cast spells?
Yeah,
I almost feel like this should be more like a warrior, kind of a berserker sort of thing, where they just get
I get what you're saying with that, but I look at it as, now that you bring it up, I look at it as like any druid or any shaman living out in the forest are crazy. Hands down. Any wizard that's studying schools of magic that drives themselves mad is crazy. Necromancers, I mean, give or take, but they also have a sick craziness towards them. And an enchanter, which could easily fit. So I mean,
yeah, okay.
I guess like I get that aspect, but you're right. I would like to see the melee aspect to the classes too, because Deranged I feel like crazy, like zombie just coming at you, H1Z1 style, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, you make a good point though. Like they're deranged in the sense that they are ultra focused on their own, you know, their own school of magic or whatever.
Right, yeah.
And so they're ultra focused in that sense, but they can't be mesmerized or charmed because they're like you said, I guess they're already kind of crazy.
Yeah. And I like the fact that which I don't know how much halflings are going to be casters. I know that they're going to be more rogues and ranger types, so that part of it's interesting with that, but I really like that the halflings can just somehow, they're kind of crazy in themselves, so I kind of get it, you know, but but fun. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next disposition. So we got Pyrophobic, which we haven't seen this one yet in any terms. So I'm curious to see the extent to this and if it's still utilized or what have you. But Fear of Fire will attempt to extinguish fire based on light sources. Fear of Fire number 2 will attempt to CC players who use fire-based attacks. So I think this is going to be a good counter to the wizard. Vulnerable to fire damage. This disposition would be more common in areas where it is consistently dark, which I would think, such as caves, crypts, and I could see this being really big in Amber Fate. Caves, crypts, and underground dungeons. It would also be more commonly found on nocturnal creatures, regardless of location or current status of day and night cycle. NPCs with the disposition would make it difficult to remain focused on orientating while navigating through darkness. Torches might only burn for a limited duration and require a fuel component to reignite them. If your torch is extinguished during combat, it would take a long time to relight it, which would be a tactical decision. Class abilities that offer a non-fire-based light source would be useful while dealing with these NPCs.
Yeah, seems like in order to counter darkness, a lot of people think about torches, you know,
and
but
fire,
like,
yeah.
yeah, and fire that would be not a good thing to have around a pyrophobic NPC. So there might be some other options like a cleric or a paladin summoning like a light globe, or
Yeah.
you know, maybe like a druid summoning some kind of wisp,
Right.
some kind of,
Yes, some light, like bioluminescent light or something like that.
yeah.
I'm trying to think, because I could see this one be more used to the player to think outside of the box on this. And to you, because this could be a crutch to you if you really don't pay attention to it, you know, or it could be just super easy to just hurdle over. But I feel like Pyrophobic might be on the fence with multiple dispositions on a mob, just because he's deranged, but he's also pyrophobic, like say a skeleton, right?
Yeah.
Meaning like mostly people kill skeletons with fire, right? So, or even vampires and stuff like that. So I could see any use of fire towards them and fire-based attacks, like wizard, he's gonna lock you down and he's gonna attempt to extinguish any fire sources too. So I would also like to see maybe he can like negate your use of fire as the wizard. Like you can't use that school of magic while fighting these guys. So it's which is a primary damage component of the class.
Yeah, and you know, warning to the players: don't use your Eredune flaming swords when you're around this guy.
That is also true. I forgot about that. Yeah, items would be a huge crutch too if you were flaming. So the potential qualifying creature types are animal, vermin, vampire, plant, seed of the spawn, not true spriggan. Yeah, that makes sense. I'd like to see that go a little bit further, maybe on undead and stuff. Increased chance archetype modifier is none, which is fine. Increased chance class modifier is ranger and necromancer. Yeah, I would also like to see, yeah, that makes sense because they don't use fire at all, so it'd be kind of stupid to have a wizard in there or any other class that uses any sort of fire or anything.
Yeah, I'm seeing it like the tree hugging ranger, they don't want fire around their trees.
Yeah,
And,
that's very
the
true.
necromancer probably dwells in the crypts and
Yeah.
and dark, dank places. So
Yeah, that's very true. Maybe the druid in there too. I don't know how much they use fire. I don't think it's a lot.
yeah, maybe them too.
But yeah, so the other potential qualifying modifiers are darkness, night, underground, stationary NPCs, nocturnal NPCs, wooded environment, cold environment, properties. Yeah, so in that realm, there's no advantages for this race on this one. So you're just gonna have to bear it.
Yeah, one of the things I think is interesting on this list is that the pyrophobic mob is vulnerable to fire damage, but if you attempt to use fire against it, then it's going to retaliate. So that offers a really interesting kind of risk reward mechanic that players have to make that determination in the moment. Are we able to handle, if we get a pyrophobic mob, can we handle using fire on it? And,
True, yeah.
And if not, maybe we shouldn't use fire on it. But if we feel safe, we understand what's around us, that kind of thing. Maybe we could feel okay using fire around it. But
yeah, and
I think that risk reward is really interesting.
It is, and I think that it all depends on your environment too. Because if you're in the darkness and your torches go out, and say you don't really have a cleric or anybody that can offer a great light source other than that, I feel it's going to be very challenging to progress further. So, yeah, it's going to be one of those things. Can we bear it, or do we have to fight or flee? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. We will see. So the next is the Predatory disposition. I really like this one as well. Really cool stuff from this one. Increased roaming radius if it is tagged as a pathing mob. Increased aggro radius if stationary, so if it means it's just standing still. Increased in combat movement speed. Ambush bonus, so you do not hear the combat engagement warhorn sound effect when attacked by a creature with this position. I really like this because this doesn't cue. Yeah. This stops the audio cue of combat. So you could be like, what? I'm in combat, and you turn around and the freaking cleric's dead. You're just like, okay.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. That's sort of like a think outside the box a little bit. Like, it affects something that's not like directly tied to the game world. It's tied to, the notification of players, the feedback that the game gives you. I think that's really interesting and cool.
Yeah, I mean, that can go a long way too. I mean, even on the next one, the bonus ambush, if a predatory NPC initiates combat, their first attack receives a damage multiplier. So he's not only surprise attacking you, he's coming with a pretty impactful hit first round. So if he gets like the enchanter or somebody that's not paying attention, or just looking the opposite way. And I could really see this like a mob falls down on you, like kind of like a rogue, like kind of Assassin's Creed type. He just drops down and just totally just, oh
yeah.
Man.
I would like to see that damage multiplier be quite heavy.
Yeah, I would almost like to see like a times, given the damage and the type of mob, but a times 2 to times 5 multiplier,
Yeah, Exactly.
Something.
I mean, if you can get the drop on someone, you can target vulnerable areas. You can, if they don't know you're there, you're stalking them and you're going to get the first strike. You have the time to, target their jugular, so to speak. And so I would like for that to be, not even just like double their normal hit, because that doesn't seem very scary.
No.
But if you get the drop, or I mean, sorry, if a predatory mob gets the drop on you, I want to see it be so heavy that it like will nearly one shot a caster or a weaker character.
Right.
Really get your heart pumping when you suddenly don't hear a war horn and you're at 10% health and you're like,
what? Yeah, for sure. Or if you're like looking in first person view up at like a perception ping and you're like looking around and you're like, oh, okay. And then like behind you. But we're only speaking in terms of just one mob, but this Predatory seems like it has advantages within a pack. So their next one is pack bonus. If an NPC with this disposition travels in a pack, their allies will attempt to assist killing their target as often as possible, meaning they'll gain up on one guy, unless they have an overriding disposition that may prioritize a different action. So that's going to be really cool. I could really see you're just running, I guess, with your group and adventuring, and like all of a sudden a pack of wolves just come up on you, like hightail it on you or something like that, and you can't escape, you got to fight them.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see what other dispositions they might come with that would work well with that. I would see maybe something that can lock you down, so you can't run away even further and they just all gain up on you.
I'm envisioning like a predatory mob that gets the drop on the player next to a bloodthirsty mob. That suddenly the player's really weak and the bloodthirsty just turns right on him and just wants to finish him off. Oh, that'd be brutal.
That would be very good, yeah. If it had bloodthirsty, that'd probably be the best one. This disposition would give new meaning to the idea of hunter NPCs. Yeah, for sure. It's like the most dangerous game, Their increased roaming radius could add an increased sense of danger and need for situational awareness, even while occupying an ideal campsite where players seek to avoid the chance of being engaged by wandering NPCs. They have a built-in countermeasure to kiting and would likely prevent massive trains, especially if they have any form of hard CC. NPCs with this disposition would be increasingly dangerous if they have any sort of stealth, invisibility, camouflage abilities. As such, it would make sense to utilize tools that can detect those types of abilities while adventuring in the area where these kind of NPCs exist. I just think a predator, dude, and you got to just be I guess Arnie covered in mud running around, trying to survive. Oh man. But yeah, this could go a long way, dude. And I really, really like what this offers. But the potential qualifying creature types are animal, vermin, humanoid, demon, supernatural, beast. Perfect. I wouldn't change one. I think they're all pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Increased chance archetype modifier for tanks and scouts could be really interesting too. Which I think the tank aspect is for warriors and dire lords.
Yeah.
And scouts, rogue, and ranger, which is in the class modifier. And then other potential qualifying modifiers are stealth, invisibility, camouflage, darkness, and pack leader, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
So the Scar are going to be the guys that are going to be your best friends in this. And I really love this because I'm tossing up between a Scar and a Dwarf. So, given the, given release and what they're going to be, the races are going to be fully fleshed out, but I want to see the actives on both of these. But I think the Scar are going to be really fun because they also have a pack mentality too. So running multiple Scars together would be pretty interesting.
Yeah. What you mentioned Scar and Dwarf? What is that? Just for one particular class?
No. So
No.
It is a Dwarf Warrior or a Scar Dire Lord. I'm a tank.
Gotcha.
I love tanks, dude. I've always loved tanks. I love warriors. I just love beating people up with two-handed things. So whether that is better on one class than the other, we'll see. You know.
Right on.
Yeah. So what do you think of the Predatory thus far?
I think it's awesome. I think it's scary, which is it's scary in a different way for me than, of course, like the Alarmist. Like I mentioned, is like probably one of my most feared. This is just like, it's scary. Like I said, it's scary in a different way. You just don't know what could be lurking. All of a sudden.
So I just
get ambushed.
Yeah, I just got the image of being in Guk, but imagine you're being in Guk and you have to worry about fleeing mobs, alarmists and stuff. But also you got to worry about packs coming around and hunting you in those halls and stuff like that. That would just be
And what if the Alarmist
cringeworthy
gets the attention of one of his allies who is predatory,
right?
And so rather than running in, they start sneaking around,
and there's a true sight around the corner, you know.
Yeah, man, I think it sounds really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go ahead and move on to the next. So we're getting into the last and final ones. Sniper, which is really cool. We haven't heard much about this. I think this is definitely paying homage to the Ranger, but extremely long aggro, like probably extremely long aggro. Maybe I could see snipers up in guard towers, as we were talking about earlier. Attack range relative to other NPCs, which is good. That could be something that can restrict it a little bit. Will remain or improve it if there is a friendly NPC out there. Will remain stationary unless an enemy enters their close range proximity. Detects stealth, invisibility, and feign death. Increased accuracy and critical hit chance. So those being said, what do you think about that?
What do I think about that?
So this is another one that can detect stealth. I read it pretty quick.
Yeah. And feign death, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I think that there should be. I know feign death was another really powerful ability in EQ that was kind of overused. It kind of broken. Yeah, like you can feign death anything, really. You know.
Yep.
So it's good to see something that's restricting feign death. I don't know. Hopefully there's going to be a lot of snipers because I don't want feign death to be broken again, you know?
Yeah, I imagine this is something that will probably mostly be found in outdoor zones with like camps.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, you know, like an orc fortress or something like that. It won't be much of a dungeon, but if you're approaching this fortress with, you know, guard towers or
lookouts and stuff
or something like that. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. And I could see like that being a deterrent into how you enter into those camps too.
Absolutely.
You know, like it could not be, we're not going in the front gate. There's too many snipers out there. Our monk's just going to get worked. We got to go around the back end, you know, like, and that's even harder, you know, cause you got to break in and whatnot. Or find a different way in, you know, which will add to the exploration. So they get increased accuracy and critical hit chance, which I like. I think that works with them, and that works with like the Ranger capability.
Mm-hmm.
This disposition will naturally counter any attempt to circumvent content via stealth, invisibility, feign death. So there you go. And would be used pretty selectively due to its attributes. These NPCs would likely occupy watchtowers, lookout points, treetops, or fortified barricades. because these NPCs remain stationary, it's possible to disengage from their range if a player gets hit from an unsuspected attack. If you're in the middle of a bunch of NPCs and get plucked out of stealth, invisibility, and feigned death when you are struck, that's going to be a really bad time. Well,
Yes.
yeah, it will. While dealing with snipers, it makes sense to avoid their line of sight and tactfully pull enemies out of the area that you are trying to advance to. When the coast is clear, you can then make your way toward the sniper, now having a chance to heal through their barrage of incoming damage without being distracted by other NPCs, allowing a sniper to free fire on your group while engaged with other NPCs would be a grave mistake.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Man,
You're just staying at range and some sniper is just plinking you from a distance while you're fighting other stuff. That's scary.
and this can totally work in a guard tower because once you're out of its line of sight, it stops attacking you. You know, it doesn't pull, it stays stationary. It doesn't run and go pull the rest of the zone down all the way to the entrance, you know, like
Right.
if you get past them, you get past them and you're clear. You know, you don't have to worry about him after that unless he sees you again, you know, of course. But
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to me that this would be almost fairly heavy on like line of sight mechanics.
yeah, so I mean, it's interesting to see what's going to be at play with that. But I would totally suspect that that's going to be on every castle of every treetop of every barricade of anything. So watch out.
Yeah, and I guess hopefully my hope would be that if there are these watchtowers, that not every mob all the time is going to have the sniper disposition. I don't know how they would balance that to make it, because if you have all of them have that same disposition, then you're kind of in
You can't. Yeah.
kind of yeah, you kind of get into the territory where if everything is something, then why is anything something?
Right. Yeah. And
Uh,
what's the point of it? Right. Yeah. And you might as well just make every mob that's in a guard position be like that, you know, if they're overlooking something. But
Right.
yeah, I would think just maybe one. Maybe like the captain of the guard or something like that is that, you know? Or the archers. I could see that being so. So the what they said, what 87 touched on in there though, I like the fact that a rogue or a monk can be just plucked out of stealth and feign death though. I really like that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So potential qualifying creature types are humanoid construct, which I don't know what's construct.
I imagine that's something like a mechanical something, like some kind of a robot or some sort of a being that's created out of parts of something, you know, like a steam engine, some kind
steampunk
of
type. Yeah,
a
yeah,
metal golem.
right. Yeah, yep. That makes sense. Increased chance archetype modifiers for none, which I think should be scout on that. I feel like scout would encompass a sniper.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Increased chance class modifier for ranged / wizard. So if they are one of those two, other potential qualifier modifiers are stationary, lookout, vantage point, which, to sum it up, is where they would be.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and go on to the next one. There's a little comments in chat and stuff like that I was just looking at. But yeah, let's go ahead and continue. So True Sight, this is not going to be your best friend when you see these guys, because this is the sole counter to a rogue and the sole counter to a monk, so that you can't really escape this. Can see through stealth, invisibility, illusions, and feign death. That being said, right there, you know, it is what it is. Can cast expose on a player, which allows other NPCs to see them even when there isn't a clear line of sight. So you can maybe see them around a corner or such.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I just
I don't know. Does this mean that like if a caster mob, if you've got like a wizard mob, can they cast like around corners? Can you no longer line of sight enemies by hiding around a corner? Like, does this mean that they can, I don't know, curve their fireball? I don't know,
man. That would be interesting. I would like to see maybe the aggro would change too. They see you coming, but you can't see them coming, type of thing, and they're just right there to fight you. But yeah, we'll have to. I love that though. I love how they can, and maybe they can even cast it on you unknowingly, you know, and you don't know you're exposed. So there's no real icon there for your benefit. Can place up to 2 true sight wards that will reveal any players who steps into their vicinity, which is very interesting too. Almost like a tripwire, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like that could be really good for choke points and whatnot. But yeah. Can they hear us in the stream?
Yeah, I think they can. I think one.
Can you guys hear us all right?
Is having some difficulty.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw that.
I think Sutarian is saying it's working for them, but it looks like computer truckers.
Okay, cool.
Trouble.
All right, sweet. I was just saying, like, hopefully everybody could hear this, you know, so whatever we just talked about wasn't muted or anything. Which no, it's all good from my end, so hopefully it's good on your guys' end. So they are immune to blind and any debuff that reduces their accuracy. So that's really interesting too. You can't really cast a veil or anything on them to shut that down. This disposition would serve as an ultimate sentry ward and would be more of a common around guarded choke points, like I said. Those gatekeepers trying to prevent sneaky infiltration and will cause major headaches for any player who gets caught in the act. The exposed debuff would last approximately 60 seconds and would only affect horizontal line of sight. The line of sight frontal cone or angle would be still applied, but these NPCs could see through the walls or other obstructions. It's possible that any exposed player could leverage their status in a positive way depending on the circumstances. True sight wards wouldn't cancel any active buff or stealth, invisibility, illusions, or feign death, but rather temporarily nullify them while players are in their range. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Potential qualifying creature types are humanoid, vampire, ghost, supernatural, beast, giant, demon, and dragons. There's a few on there that are pretty interesting. Yeah, and then increased archetypes are none. Increased chance for class modifiers are druids, shamans, wizards, and rangers, which all fit. Choke point, sentries, guards, fortress, strongholds, tunnel. Very cool. Phosphorescent and escens. I don't even know how to say that. Like, you're gonna try. But yeah, so that's the true sight. What do you think so far? And also the elves have the advantage to this, by the way, if you were being an elf.
I think one of the most interesting things listed here is they can see through illusions. Because that's not something I've ever seen. In especially in my beloved EverQuest, right? Like, illusions worked on
everything. Yep.
You know, nothing could see through it, and so being able to see through an illusion, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I wonder like where is these guys going to be particularly stationed, you know, like how it's said in choke points and whatnot, that so maybe it might prevent you that way of going if you had an illusion to get past and you can no longer do that. So maybe perception will be in your favor and you can find a way to bypass it.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So I feel like they can work hand in hand, really, the dispositions and perception.
Yeah.
So that was the final one on the card. There's just 3 that are on the innate skills for the races, or innate passives. We'll just jump into these real quick just to give like I guess your perspective really fast. There's 3. First one, avenging disposition, which we've heard them talk about. I don't know if we've seen it too much or described too much, but dwarves have the advantage to the avenging disposition. What do you think that is?
That's a really good question. I was thinking about that earlier, and the only thing I could think of was like if it's based on, let's say, faction or maybe some sort of hidden counter that's just part of our character stats. Like for example, you have leveled all throughout your 20s in Hallnir Cave, and you've killed a lot of the ratkin race or whatever.
Right.
Then this could go 2 ways. Like it could lower your faction a lot toward that race, or you could have some sort of invisible counter that you know tells the game code or whatever that you've killed 120,000 ratmen or whatever the number is.
Right. You know? Yeah.
And then a mob with the avenging disposition, they might look to seek vengeance, or you know they'll know who has killed the most of their friends or who has the lowest faction against that faction, and they'll target them maybe.
Right, and they jump to the top of the aggro list or something like that.
Yeah, like if you've spent a lot of your time hunting rats, then the avenging rats will want you dead first. You know, they'll want that vengeance. That was kind of the only thing that I could think of.
Yeah, I could see like the avenging be a percentage based of advantage you have to the player that got the kill on the maybe group, but on the player that got the kill on like his buddy or his friend. Maybe 2 of them work. The avenging disposition works with mobs in the radius, so any mobs caught in the radius that are killed don't necessarily aggro the avenging disposition, or maybe aggro him once they are killed. So within like the ground floor, his whole area is of like a certain guard tower at the bottom, and you kill his buddy out front. He hears that, so he gains a percentage at you in the coming fight. So I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, that's a good take. I like that a lot. That could work.
Yeah, and I could see that being from a brawlers to bruisers type of archetype, and it could be really situational in how they use it, but I feel like it could be utilized across all different types of zones and stuff. So yeah, we'll definitely have to see that, because if I'm main in dwarf, I really want to know what the avenging does and how to, you know, what I gain out of that, you know.
For sure.
Next one is mastermind disposition, which is advantage from the gnomes. What's your take on this?
I guess they'd just be really good at that old board game, you know, Mastermind.
I've never played that, dude.
Really? That's one of my favorites. I like it a lot.
Oh yeah.
Mastermind. I don't know. What do you think? Do you have an idea that could be?
I think this one's going to be very, very good. Very challenging too, because I feel that this is going to be another caster one, but it's going to utilize casting in the facts of determining what it's going to do is going to be very challenging, but also what it can do is going to be very challenging too as a player, because I feel like it could lock you down, it could mez you, it can debuff you. It's going to have, I feel, a lot of casting properties to it, but also just something that you have to really outsmart as a player, and what that might be. But I feel that they might target your casters and mez them, or something like that.
Yeah, silence them. Maybe
silence your
it's something
clerics
like-
so they can't heal you, but it's at specific times in the fight where it might be detrimental that they're doing this to you. If they silence your cleric when your tank's needs like a big heal,
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh crap.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I wonder if this could be something that tries to mimic how players play.
That would be interesting.
We are so used to waiting for the healer mob to begin their heal, to go and bash it, to interrupt it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it could be something like the mastermind plays like we do. When our cleric begins casting a heal, it will stop what it's doing, run over and bash the cleric. Or when it senses that the ranger is casting a snare or something like that, it will run and interrupt the snare, or attempt to.
Right. Yeah.
I think that'd be really interesting if they could code that behavior. And I guess you probably could, these days with coding, and especially like machine learning and stuff. But
yeah, it'd be hard just to do it for one disposition, but I feel that they can kind of, not necessarily machine learning, but they can kind of make it a sequence, like a couple varying sequences, depending if this then this type of thing, if this then that, so like if player heals, or if player tank drops below percentage, then silences healer or something like that. They can like write it into a script, but yeah, that's super interesting, dude. I'm happy though that the gnomes are the ones to advantage to this, because they are the ultimate masterminds, in my opinion. But yeah, let's go ahead and finish up on the last one. We're pretty pressed for time. Playful disposition. Your thoughts?
The thing that first came to mind is like just messing with the players.
That's what I thought too. Totally
like,
messing with the players.
Have you ever played or know about that really old GameCube game called Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem?
I want to say I've played it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a third person Resident Evil-ish type game, but you've got sanity meter, and as your sanity meter goes lower, just weird stuff happens like in the game that doesn't actually affect anything. Like, I don't know, like the walls might bleed, or you might it's indicative of like your character going insane, and so you might see like a ghost, but the ghost can't do anything to you. It's just supposed to mess with your mind. So like,
right, yeah.
So I wonder if like the playful disposition could like just do weird stuff, like set off fireworks just to distract you, or
yeah,
like, I don't know. I think it would be hilarious, because I love that kind of trickster, messing with the players kind of thing. Like, they make something that pops up. It's like a wooden cutout of an enemy, just to like make you think that there's an ad.
Yeah, right.
There's an ad. A goblin just showed up, and you're like, oh, we gotta deal with this goblin, and suddenly it's just like a wooden cutout of a goblin.
You like get closer, and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah, it just scares you, and you're just like, ah.
Yeah.
Playful mobs. I think that would be really, really funny, but who knows what they got in store for that.
I could see it being like, it almost does like, it plays tag with you. Like, it'll just hit you with like a big damage to one of your guys, and then just run and go hide, and like you're like, oh shit, do we gotta go and fight it? But like, will it also aggro other people?
Oh man.
But yeah, I could definitely see it being a fun type of disposition that the devs can really make it memey.
Yeah, that would be so great.
The Erekai are the ones that get the advantage from this, and yeah, so that's really to sum it up. But I'm glad that you guys all came today. So if you could give your I guess your summary of the highlights of what you like so far in the dispositions that we covered today.
Yeah, my takeaway ultimately is just that I just think it will make the game really interesting. I've heard some arguments that people say that it's not going to change the game like an especially large amount, and that may be true, but I think that's okay. I think that it should just be interesting enough that it just keeps players having to pay attention instead of just steamroll all the content because they've done it 100 times before. It makes you have to pay attention to what's going on, adjust your strategy just slightly when you need to, or majorly, I guess, maybe depending on your group makeup and what
toolkit,
where your weaknesses are. Yeah, your toolkit, but I don't think it needs to be like this groundbreaking system. But I think it's really beneficial for the game's sake to just have these little curveballs, just throw these wrenches into the system a little bit, just to keep you on your toes. I think that will do wonders for player engagement and player longevity. I just think it's really interesting. I'm super excited for it. It's up there, I think, with Progeny. Sorry, not Progeny. I don't want to
Perception.
Get on that rampage.
Yeah.
Perception.
We'll cover that in a future topic.
Yeah, it's up there with Perception as being one of the two things I'm most looking forward to with Pantheon. So I think the Dispositions sounds so cool, and I can't wait.
Yeah, well said, man. To piggyback off that, I think you're like 100% right. I really expect a lot out of the Dispositions because I feel it adds an element to the game that doesn't really happen in MMOs and that we really haven't seen traditionally, especially from an old style type of MMO that they're trying to go for. And I really feel like this captivates engagements and encounters, really. I feel like it could add longevity to the expansions and to the games and open up really big avenues for further content. And yeah, I just really like what VR is doing with this, and I think that it can go a long way. But yeah, we'll have to see more on how these get utilized in game. But thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Erekai, for coming on my stream today. I will love to have you back anytime, sir. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed the content, please like, subscribe. Also, I'm going to be putting this up on YouTube, so if YouTube's more of your thing, you'll have the actual video to listen to it, whether you're in the car or what have you, which I like to do a lot. But yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right, guys. Thank you again. Have a good night, day, wherever you're at in the world, and onward and upward.
Let's do it.
See ya.
See you later.